Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Thanks for tuning in to join the video. Just getting off the water here at Stockton Lake, heading on the water lesson today, and I'm going to try to beat this storm that's coming in right here. So I may get wet doing the video, I may have to get in the truck, but heading back to Springfield, we're going to take Elijah to the Paw Patrol deal. They had a Paw Patrol, like a little theater production here in Springfield, so I'm going to do that and wanted to do today's video real quick. And anyway, what we're going to talk about today is, and I got talking to the client I had today about it, is I feel that bass are evolving to not bite our lures anymore. Oh, here comes the rain. And what I'm talking about this, as I think it's a conversation worth having, is let me go back for where how I first learned this. Back when I started fishing, my very first memories of fishing when I was a little kid, back in the 60s, we would go down to Table Rock Lake, and with my dad down there, we go to Table Rock Lake, and let me get the window roll up here. And my dad would fish, we did a video on this before, but my dad would fish these things called hellbenders, which was basically a big metal-lipped crankbait with a spinner on the back of it. It looked terrible, and I mean, it's something they troll for stripers. And it's just unbelievable how many giant bass my dad caught on this thing. And back then we didn't know, my dad didn't fish a lot. We'd go like 3 or 4 or 5 times a year down to Table Rock or Grand Lake like that, but almost every time that he went out throwing this big hellbender, he'd catch like a 7 to 9 pounder on the thing, and others with it, 4 and 5 pounders. I got pictures of them when we were kids about these big fish on these hellbenders. So that, as I learned more about fishing, that sort of went away a little bit. And then back in about 1984, that's when I really started fishing the jig and pork frog a lot in tournaments. I started fishing it back in the 70s, but I really got into the hardcore jig and pork frog deal back in about 1983. And this was back when we were fishing a 1/2 ounce black live rubber jig with like a number 1 black pork frog on it, like black on black, or black. They didn't even have blue pork frogs back then. It was just like a black jig with a black pork frog. The blue came out a few years later like that. And there was a period of from about 1984 to about 1990, guys, where I fished, not only I was fishing the Bassmaster Invitationals in 1986, but I was fishing a ton around home, a lot of regional circuits, a lot of buddy tournaments, fishing everywhere around here. And there was a period of 5 or 6 or 7 years where I didn't do anything except I had a flipping stick with 30-pound test, high visibility blue line, a 1/2 ounce jig, and a black pork frog. And I was winning tournaments and smoking them everywhere I went around Missouri. Table Rock Lake, Stockton Lake, Bull Shoals Lake, Grand Lake. It didn't matter. or Lake Eufaula in Alabama, or in Oklahoma, Lake Texoma. Won my first BFL, which was Redman back there, in 1985 on that jig at Lake Texoma. Everywhere I went, I'd catch them on it. And then what happened is I noticed they gradually stopped biting it. And that's when everybody started fishing Texas rig worms, Texas rig craws, and then the creature baits came out. And anyway, what happens is now, guys, if you went out, the point of what I'm saying here is, if you went out now and you had nothing but a hellbender, a white hellbender like we used to catch big ones on, and a black jig with a black pork frog, most of the time you're not going to catch nothing. I mean, you're going to have, they're going to bite the black jig and black pork frog under exact perfect conditions, stained water, the heavy cover. They got to be perfect, and there's probably another bait that would work better. But back then, that's all you needed. So it got me thinking, it's like, why don't these bass bite like these hellbenders and these bombers and the black jig and pork frogs anymore like they used to? Because these fish, we've had generations and generations of fish that have evolved and not ever seen this stuff. There's been literally 4 generations of bass that have never seen a black jig and black pork frog or a white hellbender. Yet if you put it on right now and throw it, you could throw it for a week and never get a bite on it. Why is that? So here's my point of what I'm talking about. bass are like any other creature on this planet. They're in a constant state of evolution. They've been evolving for millions of years. Everything's evolving to adapt to their environment. That's how we've survived for so long, as we evolved to adapt to our environment. It's the same with bass. In my opinion, what is happening here, and this is theoretical on my point, but I would love to hear somebody's rebuttal to it. I believe, and the only thing that makes any sense to me, is that on some genetic DNA level, bass have evolved not to bite some of the lures that we fished beforehand. They've simply evolved not to go after a white hellbender. They simply have evolved not to go after a black jig and pork frog, even though they've never seen it. I guarantee out here on Stockton Lake, there's thousands of bass that have never seen a black jig with a #1 black pork frog on it. Yet you could fish it all day and you probably wouldn't catch one on it, or throw the white hellbender out here. So, and I got thinking a little bit about it. It's like, well, maybe, you know, the fish are just more educated or whatever, but that doesn't make any sense too, because how would they get educated to something they've never seen before, unless, again, it's some evolutionary process that they've accelerated to get past that. But I think it's a combination of two things. I think that I really believe that on an evolutionary level, that they're evolving on a genetic level to simply not respond to certain things that is not food to them. They've gotten smarter. And at the same time, guys, I really believe there's not near as many bass in the lakes now as there was 40, 50 years ago. You guys I hear people say all the time, oh, the fishing's better than it's ever been here. I call BS on that. What I see on the deal is that we have advanced so far in our bait technology, our lure technology, rod and reel technology, electronic technology, trolling motors, whatever, that we become so good at catching the bass that are here, even though there's far fewer of them. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine if I would go back to Table Rock Lake in 1969 with this skeeter boat that I've got behind me and all the Megabass gear and then every lure, all the swim bait technology I've got. It would be unbelievable what you would catch, because I believe that there was more bass in the lake then, a lot more bass and a lot more big bass. So I just think it's an interesting conversation to have, because in my opinion, what's happening is bass are evolving not to bite our lures. They really are. And there's certain lure categories out there that they educate themselves and evolve past quickly. That is why your baits like your plastic worms and your Senkos, stuff like that, they stand the test of time, because they don't telegraph themselves. They're subtle a little bit more. And that's also why baits like a spinnerbait or something like that continues to produce, because you're keen on a reaction strike from the fish, something that they don't. It's an evolutionary process. They don't have much time to think about it. They have to get it or not get it. So you're capitalizing on that reaction strike bite. So the point of the video, guys, is we're constantly going to be changing as far as our lure technology and what lures produce bass, decade and decades. I'm sure 40 years from now, when a lot of guys watching this video are not here anymore on this planet, that there'll be things like a Kitech swim bait that they don't bite anymore, or there'll be things like they won't bite a Senko anymore, or there'll be lure categories that we're ripping them on now that they're not biting. That is, unless we destroy our planet through polluting it to death or climate change, if we do make it that far. But that's just sort of part of the process, is what bass have been able to be here for so long. So anyway, I just thought it was an interesting thought. We got thinking about that. We got talking about today on the water, and made it out just in time. It's really starting to pour down rain here. I'm gonna head back to Springfield. Again, thanks for tuning into the video, guys. Much appreciated. And shoot me some comments. Let me know what you guys think about this theory I've got here. We'll talk later.